You did it. You actually did it. You cut the debt. You built the savings. You automated the investments. You finally crossed the finish line everyone told you was the whole point of working so hard in the first place. And then you waited for the moment. The applause, the shift, the feeling. It never came. Here is something almost nobody admits out loud. A surprising number of people who reach real financial independence describe the moment not as euphoric, but as strangely quiet, almost anticlimactic. Some financial psychologists call it the arrival fallacy, the deeply human tendency to believe that reaching a goal will feel like something, when often it just feels like Tuesday. So let us ask the uncomfortable question right at the start. If escaping the rat race does not actually feel the way you imagined, what was all of this really for? Stay with that question, because by the end of this video, the answer is going to surprise you, and it is going to completely change how you think about the next chapter of your financial life, whether you are already free or still grinding toward it. Here is a number that should stop you in your tracks. According to a survey conducted among people who identify as financially independent in America, a striking percentage report feeling some version of emptiness, restlessness, or quiet anxiety in the first year after reaching their number. Not gratitude, not relief, restlessness. People who spent years, sometimes decades, sacrificing, saving, optimizing every dollar, arrive at the destination and feel something closer to disorientation than victory. Why does this happen? Because here is the part of the rat race nobody warns you about. The race was never just about money. It was about identity. For years, your value, your schedule, your sense of progress, your conversations at dinner parties, all of it was tied to a job, a paycheck, a title, a climb. And when you escape that, you do not just lose an obligation, you lose a structure that quietly told you who you were every single day. Think about a swimmer who has spent their entire life training against a current. Every stroke, every breath, every ounce of strength built specifically to fight that resistance. Now imagine the current suddenly disappears. You would think the swimmer would feel relief. Instead, many feel lost, because their entire skill set, their entire identity as a swimmer, was built in opposition to something that no longer exists. This is what happens to people the moment they escape the rat race. The resistance they spent years fighting against simply vanishes. And without it, many people do not know how to move. This is the part of financial independence that almost no one talks about online, because it does not fit the highlight reel. Nobody posts the moment, 3 months after quitting their job, when they sit alone in their kitchen at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, fully financially free, and feel a wave of guilt for not doing anything productive. Nobody posts the strange grief of realizing that the goal they organized their entire adult life around has been achieved, and the world simply continued spinning without noticing. And that title is not just dramatic flair, it is literal. You escaped the rat race. And genuinely nobody noticed. Your neighbors are still going to work. Your old coworkers are still in the same meetings. The economy did not pause to acknowledge your exit. Your community did not throw you a parade. You expected crossing the finish line to feel like crossing a finish line. Instead, it felt like quietly stepping off a treadmill that everyone else is still running on, in a gym that does not stop just because you walked away. So here is the real question this video is going to answer. If the rat race was never really about the money, and if escaping it does not automatically deliver the meaning you expected, what actually fills that void? Because something has to. And the people who figure this out are the ones who end up genuinely thriving in financial independence. The ones who do not figure it out are the ones who statistically quietly go back. Yes, that happens far more often than the financial independence community likes to admit, and we are going to talk about exactly why in just a moment. Here is a statistic that rarely makes it into the highlight reels of the financial independence movement. Among people who retire early after reaching their financial number, a meaningful percentage eventually return to some form of paid work within a few years, not because they ran out of money, but because they ran out of something else entirely. Purpose, structure, a reason to get out of bed that felt connected to something larger than themselves. This is the part of the story that gets buried under spreadsheets and withdrawal rate calculations. The math of financial independence is actually the easy part. Save aggressively. Invest consistently. Let compounding do its work. Reach your number. That part is, relatively speaking, mechanical. The part nobody prepares you for is what happens to your sense of self once the climb is over. Think about it like training for years to climb a mountain. Every single day organized around the climb. Your habits, your discipline, your conversations, your identity as a climber. And then you reach the summit. You stand there. You take in the view. And then what? Mountains do not come with a second peak attached. At some point, you have to climb back down into a life that no longer has a climb to define it. Most people spend so much energy reaching the summit that they never once think about what existence looks like once they are standing on it. This is where the real work of financial independence actually begins, and it has almost nothing to do with money. Here is the first hard truth. Work, for all its frustrations, was quietly providing you with three things you probably never consciously valued until they disappeared. Structure, the rhythm of a day with a beginning and an end. Community, the casual relationships built simply by proximity. The coworkers you complained with, the people who knew your name without having to ask. And progress, the small, visible markers of advancement. A promotion, a finished project, a performance review, anything that gave you proof you were moving forward. When you leave the rat race, all three of these vanish simultaneously. And if you do not consciously replace them, the human brain does not interpret that absence as freedom. It interprets it as drift. This is precisely why so many financially independent people report a strange, hollow restlessness instead of relief. They remove the structure without building a replacement structure underneath it. So here is the actual answer to the question from earlier. What fills the void left by the rat race? It is not more money. It is not a longer vacation. It is not even more free time, which counterintuitively can make the emptiness feel worse, not better. The answer is intentional structure built around something the rat race never gave you the freedom to choose for yourself. Purpose that is not attached to a paycheck. This sounds simple, almost like a greeting card sentiment, but it is one of the most practically underdeveloped parts of the entire financial independence movement. People spend years building intricate withdrawal strategies and tax optimization plans for their money, then spend 0 hours planning the actual architecture of their days once work disappears. That imbalance is precisely why so many people achieve financial freedom and then feel strangely unfree inside of it. There is a specific shift that separates the financially independent people who genuinely thrive from the ones who quietly spiral or return to work out of psychological necessity rather than financial need. It is not a mindset trick. It is not gratitude journaling, although that helps. It is a complete redefinition of what the word retirement was supposed to mean in the first place. A redefinition almost nobody in the personal finance space talks about, because it requires admitting that the entire framing of working toward an exit was incomplete from the very beginning. That redefinition is exactly where we are headed next, and once you see it, you will understand exactly what to build, starting today, regardless of whether you are already financially free or still years away from it. Here is the redefinition that changes everything. Retirement was never supposed to mean the absence of work. It was supposed to mean the presence of choice. Somewhere along the way, the personal finance world quietly swapped those two ideas, and that small substitution is responsible for an enormous amount of unnecessary suffering among people who technically have everything they once said they wanted. Think about the difference between someone who spends their days gardening because they have to grow their own food to survive, and someone who spends their days gardening because they genuinely love the quiet, the dirt under their nails, the slow miracle of something growing. From the outside, both people look identical. Same activity, same hours, same dirt. But internally, those are two completely different experiences. One is obligation, the other is meaning. Financial independence does not automatically convert one into the other. It only removes the obligation. What replaces it is entirely up to you, and that part requires actual design, not just enough money in an account. This is why the people who thrive after escaping the rat race almost universally do the same quiet, unglamorous thing before they ever pull the trigger. They build something financial independence writers have started calling a purpose portfolio, a deliberately diversified set of activities, relationships, and projects that replace the structure work used to provide, designed and tested before the income stops, not scrambled together in a panic after. A purpose portfolio usually includes some version of these four things: something that provides structure, a project, a course, a commitment with a schedule attached to it; something that provides community, a group, a team, a regular gathering that does not depend on a job title to exist; something that provides progress, a skill being built, a craft being learned, anything offering visible, measurable advancement over time; and something that provides contribution, a way of being useful to other people. Because humans are wired to need to matter to someone beyond themselves, and a bank balance, no matter how large, has never once made anyone feel needed. Notice something important about all four of these. None of them require you to already be financially independent to start. You can build every single piece of a purpose portfolio years before you ever leave your job. In fact, the people who do this in advance are statistically the ones who report the smoothest, most genuinely satisfying transitions into financial freedom, because they are not stepping into a void. They are simply removing a paycheck from a life that already has its own gravity. So here is the real ending to the story this video has been building toward. Escaping the rat race was never the actual goal, even though it felt that way for years while you were grinding toward it. The real goal, the one almost nobody states clearly enough, is designing a life so deliberately structured around what genuinely matters to you that whether the paycheck exists or not becomes almost beside the point. That is the actual definition of freedom, not the absence of obligation, the presence of a life you would choose to keep living, even if nobody was paying you to live it, and even if nobody else ever noticed you had escaped at all. If this video helped you see financial independence differently, do something about it right now. Hit subscribe, because we go deeper into the psychology and strategy of real financial freedom every single week. Drop a like if this reframed how you think about the finish line. It genuinely helps more people find this video. And if you know someone chasing an exit without a plan for what comes after, send them this. It might be the most important thing they watch before they get there.